morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this week. Today we're talking about a topic that might feel resonant with you. It's anxiety. During this pandemic, I think we've all felt a little of this. And some of us have been struggling mightily with anxiety, distress, and worry lately. As my hero, Mr. Rogers, liked to say, if something is mentionable, then it's manageable. So today we are talking out loud about anxiety and seeing if there are any spiritual tools that we can draw on to help us with our anxiousness. Because anxiety lives so fully in our bodies, we'll also be practicing an embodied meditation together. But first, let's ground ourselves with a little Mary Oliver and our chalice lighting. And as I light our chalice here in the meeting house, I invite you to light a candle wherever you are. In this way, we can feel connected, even as we are apart.
Good morning, I'm Jen Shannon, and I'm your chalice lighter for today, coming to you from Truro, Massachusetts. Our chalice lighting reading this morning is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
This morning's time of meditation and prayer is a body scan. This is a great one to do if you are feeling anxious because it helps us to find where we are holding tension in our bodies, and then it helps us to release and relax some of that tension. Sometimes we don't even know we are holding tension somewhere until we release it. If you're not able to use some of the muscles in certain parts of your body, just send energy there with your mind. In the background of today's meditation, you'll hear our friend Roxanne Layton's music. I've chosen a song from her album, Calm Heart, and Roxanne explains that all of the songs on the Calm Heart album are written at 60 beats per minute. 60 beats per minute is the same amount of beats that the average human heart beats in a relaxed state. So by listening to this music, you might be able to slow down your heart rate to invite in even more relaxation. So I invite you to get into a comfortable position. If you want to, you can close your eyes and begin to breathe deeply. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, and exhale with a sigh. One more time. Inhale, exhale with a sigh. We're going to bring our awareness to each part of our body now by tensing up the muscles of that part of the body and then releasing them. We're going to do this one part at a time. Let's begin with our feet. Feel your feet planted on the ground beneath you. And now curl up your toes and clench your feet tightly and release. Moving up to your calves, make those tight and clench them for a moment. And now release them. And moving further up to your bottom, the place you're sitting, clench that tightly. And now release. Now we're going to move to our chest, the home of our heart. Our hearts are literally and figuratively doing so much work right now. So we're going to clench our chest tightly and then release. Now bring your attention to your hands and your arms. We are holding so much right now, too much. So let's make our hands into fists and clench our arm muscles tightly and then release them. And now bring your awareness to your face. Usually we try to hide what's happening with our face and put a brave face on, right? But not today. Today I invite you to scrunch up your face and make it tight. It doesn't matter what it looks like. And now release. Breathe in and out. In and out. And now I invite you to find every muscle in your body that you can and make that tight, your whole body tense. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then release that tension. And one last time, we're going to make our entire body tense. And now release that tension. Breathe steadily and deeply. Places where the earth is supporting the weight of your body. Feel held and supported by the earth. And let's take one last breath together. Inhale, exhale. Our reading today is a poem by Adri Kusuro called Mary Oliver for Corona Times. Thoughts after the poem Wild Geese. You do not have to become totally zen. You do not have to use this isolation to make your marriage better, your body slimmer, your children more creative. You do not have to maximize its benefits by using this time to work even more, write the best-selling Corona diaries, or preach the gospel of Zoom. You only have to let the soft animal of your body unlearn everything capitalism has taught you. That you are nothing if not productive, that consumption equals happiness, that the most important unit is the single self, that you are at your best when you resemble an efficient machine. Tell me about your fictions, the ones you've been sold, the ones you sheepishly sell others, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world as we know it is crumbling. Meanwhile, the virus is moving over the hills, suburbs, cities, farms, and trailer parks. Meanwhile, the news barks at you, harsh and addicting, until the push of the remote leaves a dead quiet behind, a loneliness that hums as the heart anchors. Meanwhile, a new paradigm is composing itself in our minds, could birth at any moment if we clear some space from the same tired hegemonies. Remember, you are allowed to be still as the white birch, stunned by what you see, uselessly shedding your coils of paper skins because it gives you something to do. Meanwhile, on top of everything else you are facing, do not let capitalism co-opt this moment, laying its whistles and train tracks across your weary heart. Even if your life looks nothing like the Sabbath, your stress boa constricting your chest, know that your antsy kids, your terror, your shifting moods have every right to be here and are no less sacred than a yoga class. Whoever you are, no matter how broken, the world still has a place for you, calls to you over and over, announcing your place as legit, as forgiven, even if you fail and fail and fail again. Remind yourself over and over, all the swells and storms that run through your long, tired body all have their place here, now, in this world. It is your birthright to be held deeply, warmly in the family of things, not one cell left out in the cold.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let the dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need to reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend, and like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must sigh. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share and round we go again. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance.
Do you remember earlier this spring when I compared us living in social isolation to Dr. Jerry Nielsen living on the South Pole? Well, it turns out that I was not the only one making that analogy. Many psychologists are now making connections between pandemic times and studies of those who have lived in isolation at Arctic research facilities, in submarines under the sea, and even astronauts in outer space. Doreen Dodgen McGee is one psychologist who has been thinking about this, and she particularly draws a parallel between the place that we are in right now and something called the third quarter phenomenon. The third quarter phenomenon was first described in the early 1980s in a series of studies that set out to determine how long humans could survive in space. They quickly found out that radiation and zero gravity were less of a problem than the interpersonal conflicts that arose because of the stress of living in isolation, the anxiety, the mood swings, the irritability. We don't understand what's going on with us, cosmonaut Valentin Lebedev wrote during the third quarter of a 211-day mission aboard a space station. We silently walk by each other feeling offended. We have to find some way to make things better. Dr. Kimberly Norris, an authority on confinement and reintegration at University of Tasmania, is also making links between the social isolation of a pandemic and this third quarter phenomenon. We've basically already made it through 2 periods of isolation, she says. An initial point where there was panic buying and confusion, and then a honeymoon period when it felt novel and different to stay at home. For a little while, people were saying how they were loving working in their pajamas and not having to battle morning traffic, she said. That phase, which she says we could call the sourdough starter moment, has now passed. We are now in a third phase. And even though we don't know how long this phase is going to last, which makes it a little difficult to name it the third quarter, we're definitely living out all the signs of the phenomenon. TQP, third quarter phenomenon, is characterized by agitation, irritability, depressed mood, and decreased morale. Emotional outbursts, aggressiveness, and rowdy behavior are also common. Here on Earth, the most common thing that I am noticing as we live out this third quarter time of prolonged anticipation and delay is the anxiety and agitation. Dr. Dodgen McGee says, agitation refers to a state of nervous excitement or anxiety. When agitated, we feel keyed up and on edge, possibly hypervigilant, looking for reasons to be worried or fixes for our anxiety. It also makes social interactions harder, even with those we love, because when we're anxious and irritable, we feel as though we've lost a sense of insulation between ourselves and others, or between our experiences and our responses to them. Everything feels close to the surface, and we are really highly reactive. I mean, not me. I'm never like that. But really, none of us are immune to the side effects of anxiety, and it's not exactly a recipe for harmony in the home, especially if your home is in outer space, or the iced-in South Pole, or you're homeschooling your kids during a pandemic. To provide some relief to these feelings, Dr. Dejan McGee suggests a few different things. First, she encourages us to name our feelings and grieve our losses. Anxiety is often a product of a stew of unidentified emotions, she says. Naming and listing all of those losses and feelings we're experiencing, looking for themes, processing with a friend, and creating ceremony and ritual around our losses helps us in our letting go. Maybe I'll repost that Minister's Minute I did a few months back that featured a homemade feelings chart. She also speaks about self-soothing. Gosh, that's a little hard to say. Self-soothing. This is different than distracting ourselves from our feelings of anxiety. I've been binge watching The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu as an escape mechanism lately, but I can't say that it's exactly lowered my anxiety. It's a very stressful show. So Netflix and exercise and chocolate, they all have their place in our self-care regime. But when we're talking about self-soothing, we really mean finding actions that will lower our blood pressure and usher in calm. The body scan exercise that we did earlier is an example of this. So are deep breathing, slow, mindful walks, taking a bath or a shower, and listening to calming music. These aren't expensive things. None of them have been canceled because of the pandemic, and all of us can access at least some of these tools fairly easily. We also have some other spiritual tools that we can turn to, not just to manage our anxiety, but to transform our relationship with anxiety. These are some suggestions by my colleague, Reverend Abby Tennis, down in Philadelphia. She shared them on an episode of Friday Prayer Pause a few months ago, which is hosted by the mayor's office in Philadelphia, which I think is awfully cool. The first one, which might be a little counterintuitive, is to recognize the gifts of anxiety itself. Abby says that, of course, we are getting anxious during this pandemic, but we should pay attention to what we are getting anxious about. Not where the irritability is leaking out or that last little thing that tips you over the edge at the end of the day. But when you get down to that exercise of really naming and grieving feelings, what are those things? I get anxious about the things that matter most to me, Abby says. My loved ones, my health, my livelihood, connection, community. And those are the things I should be anxious about in this kind of a time. I'm not anxious about whether my shoes look cute or whether I'm going to get stuck in traffic. So anxiety right now is pointing to what is important in my life, reminding me what actually matters. Anxiety can also give us energy to meet the challenges ahead of us, Abby says. It pulls us out of ruts, mostly through that frantic energy that courses through our body when anxiety hits. But it gets us up. It gets us into motion and allows us to start doing something. So even though we wish we didn't have any anxiety at all, it's a spiritual exercise to recognize the gifts of anxiety as well as the challenges it poses. We can also ready ourselves for it. Pema Chodron says to think of anxiety like waves in the ocean. Sometimes when we are wading in the ocean, facing the shore, we are surprised by a wave that comes up behind us that we couldn't see, and we get knocked down by it. And it takes us a long time to get back on our feet, find our breath again. It knocks the wind out of us. And if we continue to face the shore, it's going to happen again. So we need to turn and face the waves, because the ocean is full of waves and life is full of anxiety. There are going to be waves, but it helps when we can see the big ones coming, so we have some power about how we can respond. We can brace ourselves. We can breathe underwater. We can rise up to meet the wave and ride it out, jump up into it, and float back down on the other side. When we turn and face the waves, Abby says, we have power over how we meet the anxiety. Now, Abby lost her father to brain cancer about 13 years ago. And she shared that when he was in the last few months of his life, he had anxiety that kept descending on him every afternoon. Abby would take him on walks to help with that restless feeling. And when he could no longer walk, they would drive around the neighborhood. One day, when he was near the end, he got a wave of anxiety during a chemotherapy treatment. Now, he was a big guy, and Abby feared that he would pull the IVs out and leave the room. And her family was right at the edge of him giving up and them losing that last bit of hope they had. But then, in that moment, some music came on the hospital TV. It was more like muzak, Abby remembers, bad music. But she asked her dad if he wanted to dance with her. He came up and put his arms around her, and she and her dad and his IV pole slow danced through the end of his treatment that day. And his anxiety melted away as they held each other and danced. This is my prayer for all of us, Abby said, that when we are fearful, when we are anxious, that we can recognize where there are the gifts in the anxiety, pointing us to what's important, giving us energy to move on. When we are feeling like waves of anxiety are knocking us over, that we can turn and face the waves and brace ourselves, rise up and float down on the other side. And when anxiety threatens to kill our hope, My prayer for us is that we can wrap our arms around that anxiety, surround it in love, and that it will melt back down to that thing which is the most important thing in our lives, calling for our attention. May we know that we are not alone, that there is a weight, a love holding us. May we rest in that love. May it be so, and amen.
There will be better days. 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 Let the wave wash over. There will be better days. There will be better days. I am already under. There will be better days. Let the wave wash over. There will be better days. There will be better days. There will be better days. Let the wave wash over.